Boo! Did I scare you? Probably not. What's scary about a 60-year-old English teacher? Probably nothing. Hey, look what a weirdo I am. I'm in a graveyard. More specifically, my graveyard, or my future graveyard. To put it another way, it's the graveyard of my parish. And I come here a lot. It's an entirely Polish parish, and all the names are Polish. Segura, Staldachna, Skapaniak, Kulis. Not anytime soon, but eventually I'll be sleeping in the earth here. I'm going to be the first Johnson, the first Scandinavian. And I don't have a stone picked out yet. I don't need it quite yet, but I told my sons to put me over there near the corn by the fence so I can get out if it gets bad. And again, I come here a lot. And so why am I here? Well, it's warmed up a little bit. It's a beautiful day. Number two, it's, for me, it's kind of a big week because I'm a big fan of All Saints Day and All Souls Day. It's obviously also Halloween week. Halloween is this weekend. And I got to tell you something, if you're a fan of Halloween, we can still be friends. I hate it. I just hate it. Mainly because of what, a lot of bad stuff happens on Halloween. And a lot of bad stuff is going to happen on this Halloween. We have over 300,000 witches in this country, and they are fixing to do some conjuring and spell casting this weekend. I read about it on the internet. Try to affect next week's election. They think they're doing the right thing, but I think they're opening doors that they should not be opening, and I don't think it's going to work out for them the way they think. I want to tell you a story about something that happened to me a year ago, exactly a year ago. Some of my stories are old, some of them go back years, but some of them are more recent. And 1 year ago, this very week, I got to visit with a priest who is an exorcist who casts out demons from people. We have that in my faith tradition, and we'll get there when we get there. I also got a very important story for me, a poem that I want to read you by Czesław Miłosz, that is the only poem for this particular week. It's called One More Day. It's about good and evil, which I believe in. I don't believe those are abstractions. Then I got three things I want to tell you about Ernest Hemingway. And hopefully I'm behind. I worked hard on it. I made a nice video for you guys yesterday. It was one of those fireside chats, and gosh darn it, I just could not get that thing to convert properly. Corrupt file, right? So, of course, that would be the story. Let's start with the story first, and then we'll get going here. A year ago, let me put that a different way. I'm going to start that sentence a different way. For a number of years, for reasons that I don't need to go into, I've wanted to visit with the priest in my diocese who's the exorcist. There's one in every diocese. Almost no one knows that. And I'm not going to say his name, and I'm not going to say the town, because we keep that on the down low. Witches and people, members of the occult Satanists, attack them straightforwardly, physically sometimes too. And it's a college in the schools thing, right? I go from town to town to town, supervising high schooler teachers, teaching our gear. And don't worry, Long Prairie, this ain't Long Prairie. But it's not far from Long Prairie. And it's been a running joke between me and the secretary that works there, because every time I show up, he's never there. And a year ago I went flying in, and of course Father so-and-so, Father who I won't name, was gone, and she laughed, because it's been like 5-6 years. And we visited a little bit, and I think she's fun. And I was just getting ready to go, and her phone fluttered, and it was that priest. And she said, "There's somebody here that wants to talk to you, who's been trying to talk to you for years." And he said, "Well, I'll talk to someone." You guys, I was so excited because this guy is really holy. And I had the hope that I could just talk to him for 5 minutes. If he could have just carved out 5 minutes for me, that would have been enough. But it ended up being he gave me half an hour. And we talked about Halloween, among other things. And we talked about good and evil. And we talked about the forces of light and darkness coming to a definitive point. I think you guys, this is it. And then when I got up to, I should tell you, when I should have told you, when I looked into his face, my first thought was, I didn't say it, this would have been rude, but my thought was, how can someone as fat as you look so healthy? He had these red, ruddy cheeks, and the dude ran at least 450 pounds, maybe more. I mean, he was enormous, more horizontal than vertical. And as I got up to leave, I said, would you pray for me? He said, "You know I will." And then I started heading towards the door, and he said, "Don't be a stranger, I'll pray over you right now." And he put his 400-pound hand on my head. you guys and started praying spontaneously. And I started crying. I just started bawling for a split second. For one precise, perfect moment, I felt safe. And I walked out in the sky. I'll remember it was spitting up a little rain. And I got in my truck and went home. I love that man. About an hour ago, I was in my home, not in a graveyard, attending our honors PTK banquet at Central Lakes College. And I got to watch myself deliver a little spiel on beauty. I had pre-recorded it. We're promoting our classes for the spring, and I hope you're signing up for your classes. I see some people signing up for my comp too, down in Riverland, my extra class. And one of the things that I said in that video, about 60 people, was that we have to think about beauty and its importance in our lives and our relationship with it. And I hope you're doing that. You're on the hood of my truck, in case you're wondering, my big half-ton GMC. We've never needed it more. And I hope you guys are working on your aesthetic and seeking out great music and great painting and great art and great literature. And I'm trying to put great poems before you. And I think it's what I traffic in, is beauty. So here's the Nobel laureate from one of my favorite countries, Poland. I love Poland. And I love their art. That's a country that's had its nose bloodied historically, one century after another. Czesław Miłosz, one more day. Comprehension of good and evil is given in the running of the blood. In a child's nestling close to its mother, she is security and warmth. In night fears, when we are small, in dread of the beast's fangs, and in the terror of dark rooms. In youthful infatuations, where childhood delight finds completion. And should we discredit the idea for its modest origins, or should we say plainly that good is on the side of the living, and evil on the side of a doom that lurks to devour us? Yes, good is an ally of being, and the mirror of evil is nothing. Good is brightness, evil darkness, good high, evil low, according to the nature of our bodies, of our language. The same can be said of beauty. It should not exist. There's not only no reason for it, but an argument against. Yet undoubtedly it is, and is different than ugliness. The voices of the birds outside the window when they greet the morning, and iridescent stripes of light blazing on the floor, or the horizon with a wavy line where the peach-colored sky and the dark blue mountains meet, or the architecture of a tree, the slimness of a column crowned with green, all that. Hasn't it been invoked for centuries as a mystery which in one instant will be suddenly revealed? And the old artist thinks that all his life he has only trained his hand. One more day and he will enter the core as one enters a flower. And though the good is weak, beauty is very strong. Non-being sprawls. Everywhere it turns into ash. Whole expanses of being. It masquerades in shapes and colors that imitate existence. And no one would know it if they did not know that it was ugly. And when people cease to believe that there is good and evil, only beauty will call to them and save them so that they will still know how to say, this is true and that is false. A couple things about Ernest Hemingway. I've got to post up that book for you so you can start reading it. It is Wednesday and I'm behind, but this is asynchronous and you'll forgive me. I will catch up. A couple things I want to tell you about Hemingway. Hemingway took his own life on July 2nd, 1961. Okay, double-barreled shotgun. He used 2 sticks to make the matter certain in Ketchum, Idaho. And I think the principal thing that I want to tell you about that is this. I deal with suicide every year as a teacher. And I hope it hasn't touched your life, your family, or your friends. And I hope you can skate all the way through your story without it coming near you. But the chances of that happening are not very good. And in the pandemic, obviously, suicide's just gone through the absolute roof. And I think the main thing I want to communicate to you is that Hemingway, suicide is this, basically. You might think, if you don't know, that suicide is the seeking of death. Like you want to be in your grave. Like this, it's this morbid desire to be dead. That's not actually what it's about. I've read an entire book on it when I was a young man anyway. sort of the definitive book about it by a Frenchman whose name I've forgotten, but I can remember the title of the book, Le Suicide, or The Suicide. And the takeaway from that book for me was that when someone takes their own life, it's because they're in a situation that is so painful emotionally that they just want out. They just want to escape it. So do you get it? It's not the getting towards something. It's the getting away from something. And I'm going to talk about it more later on another day. But the main thing I want to communicate to you is that Ernest Hemingway, the situation that he found intolerable, and it deserves more of an explanation, and you'll get it. He couldn't write anymore. He found out that he couldn't write, not even a sentence, because of some brain injuries that I'll talk about later. And that was it. And because he was a writer before he was a man, he decided that life wasn't worth living anymore. And again, 1961, I was 1 year old, probably sitting in my crib staring fixedly at nothing, having no idea that a man who would become an inspiration in my life was going supernova in Ketchum, Idaho. I also want to tell you that Ernest Hemingway won the Nobel Prize for Literature back when it really meant something. The Nobel Prize and the usual $1.1 million that prize winners get, no matter if it's chemistry, medicine, physics, literature, peace prize, whatever, they all get the same amount of money from the Alfred Nobel Foundation. And we'll talk about that another day. I also want you to know that Hemingway was a very serious journalist when he was a young man. He didn't go to college. He just turned himself into a writer by reading. You can do that. And not a minute in college. Faulkner flunked out. Fitzgerald, who we're going to read too, he went to Princeton. Hemingway he was barely a high school graduate. But he somehow could write well enough to get a job with the Kansas City Star. And that's an important thing to know stylistically about him. He learned that journalists have to write in concise, succinct, clear, readable sentences. And that's what Hemingway is all about. And he's just a million miles away different from William Faulkner, who was never a journalist. You can read Hemingway, you can read Fitzgerald. I guess we'll find out if you can read William Faulkner. And when you read The Old Man and the Sea, that is what you're taking in. A guy who's just reporting. One more thing today. I'm not much of a thinker. Never have been, believe it or not, even though I have advanced degrees and teach in a college and stuff. I've told you probably before, forgive my redundancy, I'm not teaching critical thinking, I'm teaching critical feeling. And what I'm trying to communicate to you with these American writers is a feeling, something that I feel. And I feel it when I hear a Johnny Cash song or a Wilco song, when I hear great American music, when I look at a great American painting like Groundhog Day. I just get a feeling. My dad issued a number of deathbed curses. I'm still talking about death, I guess. And one of those curses was, he said, every year that you live, you're going to get more patriotic. Well, that dude was right. My sweet father was right. I am a patriot. I always have been. I love this country that is in big trouble right now. It's burning, and I am nervous about next week. The protests are going to it's a revolution, guys. There's a revolution happening. There's another disease coming too. I can feel it in my bones. I keep having dreams about it. Another disease that's worse. But in spite of all that, up against all of it, I am a patriot about our literature and our music and our art. You cannot beat American literature. And it's a feeling. There's no other way to put it. It's just a feeling of greatness, of the epic, of home. But my light levels are getting weird because the sun is coming in and out of behind those clouds. I can't remember. I keep goofing up. Did I show you all? How could you answer? I'll have to review this. I don't think I quite showed you proof that I was a Halloween king in 1971. I ran part of this video without having the mic on. I think I mentioned it then. Yeah, I was king. I was king in 1971. Donna Hadley was my queen. We rode and my whole school walked behind me. That's a tradition in Anoka. Again, the town just goes out of its mind when Halloween comes. And here I am as a little guy. I thought I was going to marry Donna Hadley, shy Donna Hadley, but I didn't. I married someone different. Let's just hope this worked. And if it doesn't, I will do it again and again and again and again. I'm not giving up on you guys or getting you this content one way or another. God bless you. Be safe. Stay well. Dang it, you guys, I almost forgot something super important. Now I'm suddenly, now there's more of me, right? You thought you were done with me for the day, but I'm back. And I had to duck into this extraordinary place. I'm in Holdingford, Minnesota now, 5 miles north of the town I was just in, St. Anna. And quick, really good story, and then I'll tell you why I'm back on. I gotta show you my favorite thing on the internet. But I'm at a place called Arts in Motion. It's a story of a dude who left this small town and went off and made millions of dollars, and then he's back in Holdingford helping his town. And he created this unbelievable art center. You're only seeing a little bit of it. And it's on what we call the Lake Wobegon Trail. He wants everything here. He wants visual arts, he wants music, he wants performances, concerts. There's studios where people can give lessons on how to make art. And I'm, as you can guess, I'm already his poetry consultant. I'm going to be hosting poetry readings here, not with First Like Water, but, well, maybe with First Like Water. Got to talk about that with my department. So it's a good story of a small town guy, making good and then coming back. And I stand in church with that guy. We're friends. So here's what I almost forgot about. And I jumped in the car after I left the cemetery and I thought, you forgot. Hemingway is all about danger and fear. And one of the greatest studies of fear on the entire internet is a dead simple idea enacted by a filmmaker who put high-res 4K cameras on a 10-meter, it's called 10-meter tower, 10-meter platform. And he put a platform, cameras on a platform. I don't know where this is, Germany, Scandinavia. And then in 10 meters is a long way to jump into a pool. And then he invited people to go up and go out on the platform and see if they could do it. You can Google it and watch the whole thing. It is an absolute fascinating study in human nature. It's 16 minutes long. And I want us to take a look at my favorite couple on the entire internet and then a couple more, including a 66-year-old woman, and you'll have to see if she jumps. Frida and Felix are my favorite couple on the entire internet. Study her face. He's a little bit more stoic, but she loves him. She is radiating nothing but love for Felix as he tries to figure out if he's going to jump or not. And just have some fun with this. And then I'll try to edit this here and get going. Hey there, Riverland and Long Prairie Grey Eagle. Feeling a little hexed lately. I'm not going to say the word curse because that's illegal for me. But I'm struggling a little bit, right, this week, trying to be your teacher from a long ways away. And let's review it. I made that video and I tried to render it, and I was proud of that. It was fine. It was a pretty good vid. And there was a corrupt file, and it just would not render. And I notified you. I said, I'm in trouble. So then yesterday I make another video, completely different setting, graveyard. Beautiful day, a little windy, but it was nice out there. And I tried to craft it, and then I load it, and I think 8 or 9 of you saw it, and Brenton graciously alerted me, your video got taken down. Copyright violation. Like, whoa, I've been slapped on the hand here a little bit, but they took a video down, really? A bot took it down? I gotta think about this in a couple different ways. Maybe this is punishment for being such a pirate. I'm terrible. I'm incorrigible. I've got a classical music collection that's almost 4 terabytes. When I said that to classical mythology the other day, I said to one of the students in there, hey, guitar brother Adam, do you have any idea how much music is in a terabyte? He hadn't even heard of a terabyte. And in the chat, somebody quickly posted up, that's 7 years worth of music. Somebody had obviously opened up a tab and done the quick Google search. And it's just a fact about me. I don't steal movies, but I need the music, and I need it for educational purposes. And I sleep like a baby. You could say, don't look at me as a role model in this instance. You could say, aren't you worried about artists getting paid? Well, you know what? I've gotten $300,000 in the last 8 years to poets. I sleep like a baby. But yesterday, some bot shut it down, and I'm a little cautious about that now. I have the suspicion it might have been because I took a YouTube video that was just widely available, downloaded it using the download feature on YouTube, and then spliced it in. One of my favorite things, 10-meter tower. I'm very nervous that it was just a photograph. If you can, you know how it works. If you highlight a photograph and can drag it to your desktop, I just assume that I can use it. And so it's probably time to talk to my son, who knows a lot more about this stuff than me, and probably time to create some kind of peace treaty with YouTube. I've never called YouTube, but it's probably time so we can come to some understanding. And so here's my crap plan. I need to get you some material, and I need it not to be taken down tonight, and I need it to render, and I need to get over to St. John's in the twilight and upload this for you. And the plan is relatively simple. I still have the 2 clips from yesterday. I'll make a new video. I'll put up a link to 10 Meter Tower, and I'll add this in as an addendum, and then alert the 9 or 10 of you, whoever saw it, hey, here's yesterday's video. Some of you saw it, some of you didn't. If you did see it, scrub the bar until you get to the such and such mark, and we will go from there. So there's basically 2 things that I want to do. I want to talk to you a little bit about Ernest Hemingway's writing process, which I think I understand pretty clearly, more than the average English major, because I've thought so much about him. And it's going to take some daring do, because I'm going to compare my process in creating something with Hemingway. And that seems daunting because I'm comparing my writing with a Nobel Prize writer. But the point of doing it is, I understand, for instance, the poem that I want to talk about and created this past spring. And I know what Hemingway did. He kidnapped people right into his literature. And then, and this is going to suck. I mean, I know it's going to suck. Because it needs to be surefire, I don't need any more slaps on the hand by bots this week. And this is only the 2nd video of the week, and I need to produce 3. Not that every syllable's got to be repeated. But how's this for a bad idea? I'm actually going to take this beautiful camera, and I'm going to tilt it towards another laptop that I've got here, and it's up on a monitor, a defunct monitor, and I'm going to run a presentation by you using the monitor. My projector, I left it in a church last night where I was teaching confirmation, and if I'm going to keep getting slapped in the hands, I'll just get cut to it. I'll just present physically. I'll set up my giant screen in the basement, maybe. It's kind of nice down there. It's a finished basement, and then I can avoid the trouble. Who wants to be cuffed? Let's put it. Okay, let me put it this way. Preliminary thought. I'm trying to get you all interested in beauty, in great art, and I hope too that some of you once in a while think about using your creativity and imagination to make something, to be makers. That's a theme of my Intro to Humanities class. Every year, and I try to put that habitude of mind before them. You guys, making art is important, even if you think it's not very great. And to that end, they're the happiest days in my spring humanities lecture. There's always more than 40 students in there in that beautiful classroom that I'm dying to get back to, and we have like painting day, right? Where I go into my cubbyhole and I bust out tons of prang paints. And we listen to classical music, and we do watercolors for a whole class period at a college. And they are so happy doing that. They look just as much forward to sculpting day, where I bust out a ton of Play-Doh in the room. I mean, I have a little thing of Play-Doh in my office just to help me calm down when I'm stressed. I take the lid off and take a little hit off of it and smell it. Oh, I'm 8 years old again, and everything's fine. So that's important to me, to encourage students to do that, as well as taking students to the Guthrie, to the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, etc., to witness art. That's probably the bulk of it, but here's what I want to tell you. In Brainerd, a beloved colleague of mine, Brandy Lindquist, Professor Brandy, who's an actual writing teacher, unlike me, a fake writing teacher, who's secretly a literature person, obligated to joyfully carry writing classes, took a year of sabbatical recently to learn about what it would take to rejuvenate and bring back and recreate a literary publication that we had at what we used to call Brainerd Community College until the late 70s. And she did it last year. And she called the periodical what we used to call it, Bent Pine. And then she solicited photographs and paintings and stories and poems from not just from students, from all over the state of Minnesota. And she created a beautiful publication, and it was the cancellation of the cancel culture broke her heart too, because she had to cancel the big poetry reading we were going to have with everybody who created stuff. She asked me to write a poem. And I want to talk about the process I went through to create that poem in comparison with how Hemingway did it. And I'll try to be efficient about it. I hadn't published a poem in a long time. Everybody knows I love poetry more than anyone in the state of Minnesota, but it's been some years since I published a poem, and I used to publish them all the time. And that's a little bit of a mystery to me. So this spring, I resolved to do some writing, forgive me, using my Catholic imagination. So I wrote some pieces, including one called The Gaze of St. Michael. You could Google that. It appeared in tens of thousands of people read that, and some of them are still contacting me as they discover it. And I also attempted to write a poem with a religious theme. And what I did write a poem about and published my first poem in years was a poem about the good thief, okay, whose name was Dismas. And it's okay if you're not a believer. The Bible should be read as great world literature because those stories are fantastic. And I say all the time, if you don't know your Bible and you don't know mythology, classical mythology, you're just not going to know what's going on. And some of you may know that when Jesus was crucified, he was crucified with two common thieves. We know them as the good thief and the bad thief, or alternately, the penitent thief and the unpenitent thief. So the scene's rough, man. When they've got like 10 minutes to live, hanging on that hill. Some of you might know the crucifixion is about suffocation, right? You're hanging there, and you have to pull yourself up to breathe. And you can only do that so many times before you can't. And everything's... It's just hitting the fan. Hell's just breaking loose. The dudes are dying. The earthquake has begun. There's an unpredictable eclipse of the sun is happening. The curtain is being torn. Herod's wife and Pilate's wife are freaking out, kind of going, what have they done? Longinus, the soldier, standing there in silence, realizing we have done the wrong thing. And there's a moment where the bad thief turns to Christ and says, you're a god, get us out of here, save us. And the good thief rebukes him instantly. He says, something along the lines of, hold your tongue. You and I are criminals. This man is innocent. He hasn't done anything. And then he turns to Jesus and he says, when you come into your kingdom, remember me. And Jesus says, this day you will be with me in paradise. I love that story. I love that story because it's a story about last-minute salvation. Like Dismas was a bad dude. He was a thief. He killed people along the border of Israel and Egypt. And just that last minute, he reached out. And Jesus reached back. So I wanted to write a poem that honored him. But here's the thing. We don't know anything about Dismas. Everything that we know about him is apocryphal or kind of mythological or anecdotal. You know, what we know about him, you could put in a thimble. So I used my imagination to fill in the blanks. And I wrote a poem called Dismas Saw, which is a compilation of everything that Dismas could see from the cross that he was hanging on. In particular, he could see the current apostles and their fates, right? Some of you know that in that moment, all the apostles except for John ran. They all ran. Like hell, because they were scared. And the guys that died, the guys that ran, all were brutally martyred. All of them. Like when I looked it up, how each apostle died, it's horrific. Bartholomew, the apostle Bartholomew was boiled in oil in Armenia. Peter was hung upside down because anyway, let's not go into that. So here's the premise of the poem. Dead simple. Everybody thinks that they were running away from something, but my poem has them running towards something. I flipped it. They're running towards something, and what they're running toward is their martyrdom. So, takeaway, I dreamed it. I imagined it. And I certainly am not going to proclaim it has more integrity than what Hemingway did. But what did Hemingway do? Almost every time, he took real people, real men and women, and just kidnapped them and put them in his short stories and novels. He barely changed their names. Fitzgerald did the same. So did Faulkner. The Old Man and the Sea, the novel that I posted up for you to read, guess what? Hemingway met a fisherman in the Florida Keys, a Cuban fisherman, who in a bar one day told him a story while they were drinking mint juleps. not Minchinev's, gin gimlets. The fisherman, an old man in the sea, told Hemingway a long story about how he latched into a 1,200-pound marlin that pulled him around the Gulf of Mexico for 2 long days. And he was just getting back to shore. He could just see the distant shore when the sharks smelled the blood and came. Well, that's how Hemingway did things. He turned that into a novel. Think of A Farewell to Arms. I hope I haven't told you this story. Hemingway was delivering chocolate and cigarettes to soldiers on the front. His van was hit by a mortar. He gets out. He's concussed. His kneecap is blown off. It wasn't where it was supposed to be. And even though he was out of his mind, he couldn't remember any of this. He ran off the battlefield while carrying a wounded Italian soldier. That's pretty badass. And then the real Hemingway, the actual Hemingway, ended up in a hospital where he fell in love with a nurse that did not love him back. And so what he did then was he wrote a novel in 1925 called A Farewell to Arms about a guy who gets blown up while eating a ham sandwich. And Hemingway had that man go to a hospital, in the character, Frederick, where he falls in love with a nurse named Catherine Barclay. But it's a working out, isn't it? Because in the novel, Catherine loves Frederick back. So Hemingway kind of went over the line in terms of real life. Are you ready for the part that's going to just suck? And it's going to suck because I'm going to get all dark when this gets light. And it doesn't matter. You don't need to see my 60-year-old face. This is a ridiculous idea, but if I go here, maybe it'll focus on it properly. I have no idea what that looks like. I think it's too bright. But anyway, let's just stumble through it and you'll forgive me. At least you'll get some more storytelling out of it. Ernest Hemingway was born in that magic breath of time, 1896 to 1900. And he was born in Oak Park, Illinois, which is a suburb west of Chicago. And his father was a physician, so there was money there. There I go. I'm going to get dark here, and that's just fine. I'm sorry to report to you that suicide often runs in families. Hemingway's father killed himself, and so did one of Hemingway's children. I believe it was a daughter. And this is Hemingway probably in high school. Some of my girls yesterday decided that he was a handsome boy. World War I. You know, we've had wars that American... Look how it's focusing on the eyes. I like that. We've had wars in this country that American boys did not want to go fight in, most notably Vietnam. My uncles all fought there, and they came back from Southeast Asia without a scratch. World War I and World War II were different. The boys wanted to go fight in those wars. I mean, if you were 18 years old, musicians, artists went. Everybody wanted to go fight the Kaiser, and Hemingway went. Faulkner went. F. Scott Fitzgerald went. They all went, but only Hemingway got near the blood. And here he is in his army uniform. Now, this is a very important photograph. I don't know what you can see of that. Make your screen really big. I don't know who these two women are, but I do know who this woman is here. Hemingway is standing next to a woman named Sylvia Beach, a very famous woman who owned a bookstore that's still alive and well in Paris, France. And that bookstore is called Shakespeare and Company. There's a sad part of this story. Hemingway looks like $1 million here. He's got a Band-Aid around his head. And I'm going to tell you more thoroughly the story later, but Hemingway suffered a series of head injuries across his life that had very serious consequences. And if you're a football player, I'm worried about you. If you've had even one concussion, I'm worried about you. I've decided to wait another day to tell you what the effects of the concussions were, but Hemingway also was an incorrigible partier. So was Faulkner. So was Fitzgerald. Free advice, have little or nothing to do with alcohol. All you very young people, go easy on it. Maybe don't even pick that beer up. These guys were all complete and total drunks. And alcohol fueled them until it destroyed them. Why does he have a bandage around his head? Because the night before he was literally drunk and swinging from a chandelier. And he pulled the whole thing off the plaster ceiling on his head and ended up in the emergency room in the middle of the night in a Paris hospital. So remember that, will you? Go easy on that. My students yesterday agreed that this is a woman who kind of looks like a dude, and that's okay. This is the very famous Gertrude Stein. You can't talk about Hemingway's life and times without talking about Gertrude. Gertrude Stein mentored Hemingway when he was a young writer in Paris. She's an American writer whose prose I just don't care for. I just don't. I don't read her. And maybe I should give her another chance. But she was an American living in Paris for decades. And she lived with her, this is before gay marriage, she lived there with her girlfriend / almost wife, Alice Toklas, I believe was her name, who wrote a very famous cookbook. And in their genius, when the Nazis later inhabited Paris, much of France, she and her girlfriend had to survive. And they were Jews, right? And they wanted to stay out of the concentration camps. They knew what was going on. So to survive, brilliant move, they pretended to be Catholics. They got rid of every Jewish thing that was in their apartment. Everything. Not even a Jewish book was left behind. And they hung up a bunch of Catholic stuff, including rosaries, and they started going to Mass. And they lived. Pretty good move, I think. I don't even want to talk about this slide much. This is Hemingway. Google it. Hemingway's often pictured with a drink in his hand. And here he is with one of his sons. He's got a little sombrero on and he's got a machine gun. Because for a while during World War II, at the beginning of it, he and his friends had the idea that there were German U-boats around Florida. So their idea of a good hobby would be to get liquored up at night and run around in a speedboat looking for them. They never found any, but they got some serious drinking done. Here he is in World War II. He wanted to go to that war too, but he was too old, so he went there as a journalist. Here he is, drink in hand at his typewriter. And this is in Ketchum, Idaho, his home in Idaho, where he took his own life. And I'm almost down to the last thing I want to tell you. Here he is with the famous Gary Cooper. Now I'm lit up again. We're both lit up. Gary Cooper is an actor that played Frederick in the first Hollywood version of A Farewell to Arms, which is not a very good movie, but boy did they become good friends. And they became hunting buddies. And Hemingway's here, Gary Cooper's here. I don't know who this dude is, and I don't know the names of the dogs either, but they're obviously bird hunting in the West. And let's get to one more story, a couple more. Some of you might recognize Hemingway standing here with Fidel Castro. And later I'll tell you why that got him in serious trouble with the FBI, like big time trouble. But I think the main thing I wanted to tell you is that Hemingway, he loved the world, he loved food, he loved hunting, he loved life. And he was very wealthy. He's one of the few writers in those days that became a multi-millionaire through his book sales. And he had homes all over, okay? And wherever the home was, kind of like a chameleon, he would go local, big time. So when he was in Cuba, he would wear Cuban shirts and smoke cigars. When he was in Michigan, where he had a home, he wore flannel. When he was in Italy, he dressed like an Italian. And, how far did going local take it? I'll tell you a quick story. Hemingway once was in the jungles of Africa hunting with one of his 4 wives, I think Martha. And she had to go back to London to do some work. She was a writer. And she left Hemingway for a month in a village in the jungle with a tribe. And he hunted for a month. And when she came back, he wasn't in the village. And this is kind of creepy, but the fact is there. As I read in Mike Reynolds' 6-volume biography, when she couldn't find her husband, she asked some boy, "Have you seen my husband, Ernest Hemingway?" And he pointed and he said, "Yeah, he's out in that field." She went out there and she found Hemingway standing there naked with just a loincloth and holding a spear dyed completely blue from the berries of some indigenous berry. And he had covered himself, he had turned himself blue because he was fixing to marry the chief's daughter. And she took one look at him and said, "We are going home now." And he got him out of there, and he was blue for weeks, which I think is hilarious. And the last photograph is a spooky photograph to me of Ernest Hemingway standing in a bathroom at 2 o'clock in the morning in Finkelverde, Italy. He wanted this photograph taken with his favorite shotgun, the one he would blow his head clean off with, because his apartment had been burgled, and he wanted the local newspaper to publish that photograph to let any burglar know, hey, if you come back to my apartment, I'm going to be waiting for you. Okay, I'm going to cross my fingers. I appear to still be recording. It is editing time. Let me end by doing something that teachers don't do very often, which is thank their students. I know you know that I love you, even though you're far away and you're just, I'm behind on your writing, but I'm going to catch up with it. That's why I paused journals this week. But I do want to thank you for being my students and for your continuing patience with a 60-year-old dinosaur who's trying to survive in the pandemic, offering content online. It's a little lonely. I feel a little bit forlorn sitting over at St. John's uploading videos out of my pickup truck to stay safe. Virus is cruising there. It's just soaring right back up. They had it under control for a while, and guess what? Now they don't. And I'm eating all kinds of supplements to keep me safe, so don't you worry about me. Stay safe, stay well. Love you guys. God bless you.